Arcot Tribal Radio.
Your stop for payment talk.
Matt, how are you?
Good, James. How are you?
Very good, very good.
Yeah, good speaking with you.
You too. So thanks for being here with us for our first Customer Tribal Radio.
How would I miss it?
That was very informative. Well, I was thinking exactly the same thing. So, so as we discussed, this is intended to be a series of conversations with various people across the Arcot, the Payment Security Division, as we're referring to it. So we'll be speaking today, but then we'll be speaking with people in your team from data science, product, customer success, kind of the key divisions across the unit. So the first thing I thought we'd jump into is we're calling it Tribal Radio, and we're also referring now to Arcot. So two potentially slightly emotive terms there. Tell us a bit about those two words and why we're bringing them into the fold.
Yeah, so good point. So Arcot Tribe, right? That's who we are now inside Broadcom. So we've gone through, Arcot was the original business that CA, Computer Associates, acquired in 2010. And it was the genesis of what is now our Payment Security Division inside Broadcom. So it's what's pretty fun about, now that Broadcom's bought CA, what's fun about Broadcom is we're bringing back a lot of the original brands from the acquisitions that we'd done when we were part of CA, and Arcot is no exception. What I've quickly realized through my interactions with our customers is that people still call us Arcot anyway.
Yeah,
so
they do.
It's really not probably much of a shock to those that are listening, because
Right.
people are probably saying, I thought you were Arcot already, but we've actually gone back to that, and now we are Arcot, the Payment Security Division inside Broadcom.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty exciting. I know our team, our employees, and our teammates are incredibly excited about it. It's something that they can latch on to and feel like they're part of. And we're really taking this tribe part seriously now that we're a standalone division inside Broadcom. We've got more accountability and decision-making authority than we've ever had as a business. And I think it's going to be, you're going to see our customers are going to see some meaningful changes from the setup.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's back to that, potentially customers are always right, well, not potentially. And customers have been calling us Arcot for many, many years, right? Even when we go to move away from that.
So and I'm sure people listening too, big companies tend to try to take all the personality out of things, but we don't want to do that. We want personality. We are Arcot, we're proud of it, and I think our customers are proud to be doing business with us. Yeah,
very good, very good. And it's interesting you mentioned there around, we're talking around the tribe and the whole idea of a tribe. So the reference and the book that comes from, there's a particular section in that where it talks about tribe being a movement. And I know that you internally have tried to kind of create a movement of this team around the areas of fraud and risk and payments. And I think as I was listening to that, it really resonates as well in the market that we can create a tribe of customers and partners and people who are interested in this to aim towards an area where we can genuinely collaborate around fraud and risk in a way that can be quite unusual in payments, but we can do that. It does feel as though we're creating with absolute sincerity, a movement around how do we drive out fraud? How do we make the customer experience better? And how do we innovate for these new kind of payment experiences? And we're right at the center of that.
Yeah, I haven't been this excited about a domain in a long time and in my career. Yes, I've been in infrastructure software, where some could argue, there's exciting parts and not exciting parts and all that stuff, but none of it's as exciting as what we're doing here in the payment space. It goes for our customers, it goes for our teammates here internally and as part of Arcot. It's a very cool domain to be part of. There's a lot of interesting stuff, tons of innovation, tons of money, no pun intended. That's what we do. We're in the business of making sure money moves from person to person or business to business without a hitch. So I agree. I think that tribal mentality and the momentum we're starting to build in the market applies to our customers as much as it applies to our teammates, for sure.
Yeah, great to see. Great to see the Arcot name coming back. Coming back as well. Now, the other point
I'll show you my tattoo a little later.
I don't need to. It's fine. Yeah. So if we think back to Arcot was formed in '97. We developed 3DS in 2000, and then recently you've taken over the GM role for this newly formed division. But I wanted to mention, because you've actually been involved with this business for close to a decade, if not more than a decade, as we ramped up towards the CA acquisition. So I'm sure people would be interested in how was that experience, and it took you a while, but now you're absolutely full on in the payments area and raring to go with a lot of excitement. So what was that experience like back in 2010?
Yeah, so when I was part of CA, I did a lot of stuff, but I did a bunch of stuff in the M&A space. And so while I wasn't directly involved in Arcot, I had a front row seat to how Arcot came into CA and how it became part of CA and how we ran it inside CA. And it's been fun, because I know that when Arcot came into CA, there was really two parts of the business. There was the part which we now identify with Arcot, which is the payment security part, and identifying fraud and helping customers stomp it out. But there was also, the technology that allows for strong customer authentication. SCA was also sold horizontally into enterprise IT divisions as a security solution. And we at CA were in the enterprise IT business, and that's what we did. We sold software to CIOs and to help manage data centers and all the associated infrastructure components. And when we bought the company, we bought it because we thought that was going to be the thing, right? And then, it came with this little credit card business that was doing some, a small amount of business. And we didn't quite know what to do with that credit card business. It was sold differently to a different set of buyers, and it was just different. And so we just set it aside and said, okay, we don't know what to do with that, so let's just set it aside.
Planted a seed, so
yes,
to say.
Yes, right, exactly. Established an innovation center.
Innovation center.
Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, it just kept growing and growing and growing and becoming more important and more important, and the market kept evolving, and the team did a great job keeping up with the market and making sure that the solution was evolving with the needs of the customers, and it turned into a pretty big business. And then when CA was bought by Broadcom is an expert at integrating acquisitions. That's one of the core competencies of the company, and had done it very, very well. And like any company that purchases another company, the first thing you do is look at the cross portfolio and say, hey, what do I have?
Right.
Where are the winners? Where are the losers? What do we want to do? And so the management team asked me to take a look at this business and say, hey, it's a little different. It's not really what we do in enterprise IT. What should we do? How should we run it? How should we manage it? Should we sell it? Should we keep it? Should we do all this stuff? And after looking at the business, it became very clear to both me and the senior execs at Broadcom that this was a keeper, and this was something that we wanted to invest in, and something that if we manage the business correctly, we could provide a ton of value to some of the largest financial institutions in the world. And to make that happen, what we decided to do was set up it as a standalone division inside Broadcom. So now we've gone from the full life cycle of this small little component of an acquisition in 2010 that just kind of got put to the side, started growing, to now fully functioning division inside one of the world's largest technology companies. And I think there's a lot of runway here. I think it's going to be a fun next chapter.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think everybody's familiar with like the analogy of the second half of the chessboard, right? With the rice, and when you start to get into some really big numbers. I think for the initial part, I mean, this business was growing. But I joined in 2012, so 2 years after the acquisition, and it really felt it was at its inflection point. We talk about a new inflection point now with EMV 3DS. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I think up to then, we've been talking about authentication, primarily password authentication on every single transaction. And then since then, we've been adding in the rules, the data science. We're now looking at additional channels with mobile. And merchant adoption, we believe, we're on the cusp. So throughout that period, it feels like we've seen rapid growth, to your point, and it kind of feels like we're at another one now with all the innovation and growth in e-commerce, and fraud isn't going anywhere. So it's been a really interesting ride. So with that context, then, that you have been involved in this business, for a decade. Now with the taking over the GM role.
Makes me feel old, by the way. It makes me feel old.
You're young enough to have a tattoo,
okay,
so
yeah,
you're fine.
Yeah.
So with that context, do you, in the GM role, how are you feel? I mean, how are you feeling about, taking on the role? Was there any big surprises? Was it as expected? And how's that kind of led into the direction of travel for where we're going?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting, right? Because the first thing you do is go meet with a bunch of customers and see what's going on. And what was clear is that over the first, as we figured out what we wanted to do with this business, we had some operational stumbles, or challenges, I'll say it that way. We were a bit rudderless. We didn't know, was this going to be integrated? Was it not? And,
right.
I'm sure anyone who's been through an acquisition can understand that there's a bunch of turmoil and people wondering what's going to happen and what does the future look like. And I think some of that got exposed to customers, which is unfortunate. We're not hiding from that. We take accountability. And I think the good news is all the customers that I've worked with and spoken with since taking the job, want us to do better and are getting a ton of value from the solution and, are giving us a bit of leeway to, get our act together. And I think that's what we've done in the first few months. I feel like we've shored up our operations. We've now got the full weight of Broadcom behind us. We're a standalone division. We've got our own business. We can make our own decisions. We can, address customers as needed. And I think that we're in a really good place. Now, in terms of the market too, clearly the market is taking off. I mean, it's just accelerating. The volumes we're expecting with the MV3DS and the impact of PSD2 in Europe, not just for the issuing banks in Europe, but if you think about all the merchants in North America that want to sell online in Europe and have to be compliant with the new regulations in Europe for strong customer auth and the things associated with PSD2. There's a lot going on, and there's a big demand for solutions such as ours to help provide a ton of value and help customers eliminate fraud while maintaining regulatory compliance.
Yeah. It's interesting because we've been taking a message to customers for a while now, which is with the expected upside and growth. You mentioned EMV, we've got PSD2, we've got generally people are shopping more and more online. We've been saying, get ready, right? Optimize that platform, make sure your rules are configured, that your data science scores are configured, that customer experience, in other words, get ready. But I think also within Broadcom, there's been a lot of work to get ready as well, right?
Yep.
So we've changed our engagement model with customers. We know that the cost of supporting customers has gone up because, not least, the fact that there's just this system is more and more complex. It's moved to my early point from an authentication check. This is now a tier 1 mission critical payment system. And if anything, it's only going to become more valuable, right? So we're changing our model, our commercial model, and how we engage with customers. And what's really struck me throughout this whole exercise is just how good Broadcom is focus.
Yep.
Right? So focus on tier 1 customers, but also focus on from a product perspective, right? And I know that from the conversations we've had, we're very focused on tier 1 customers and on the product side around doubling down on 3DS. So any comments around that from a customer side or from a product perspective?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that just providing a tool. If you are good. If you work with customers to just get a contract signed, that's only step 1, right? Then it's like, if you just throw software or a SaaS service over the wall and expect customers to make use of it, you're gonna fail, right? And what we want to do as an operating model is we want to wrap our resources around our largest customers. And we want to have assigned customer success teams that become an extension of our customers. And they become the customer's voice inside our division, and they become our division's voice inside our customers. And if we're able to do that and assign dedicated services teams to our largest customers who are undergoing, massive change. I mean, some of our largest banks in Europe are expecting over 200% transaction growth as it relates to MV3DS over the next 12 months. And so if you think about that, 200% transaction growth is it's a big number. And we want to have in place with our largest customers assigned teams that just focus on making our customers successful with our service. And it's no longer we're going to avoid all forms of hit and run where we do a project and run away, and then until the customer calls us back and we do another project and run away. We don't want to run away. We want to stay involved. We want to wrap resources. We want to be an extension of our customers, because I think that's the way that we can deliver the most value to our customers, and customers can, address all the regulatory concerns and, minimize the amount of fraud that gets through and become best in class at what we're trying to do, which is avoid fraud. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's moved from a IT implementation project. This is constantly evolving, right? I mean, the idea that you can implement 3DS or a fraud solution, then back away from it. I mean, no one's doing that, right?
Yep.
And I don't think anybody will move to that model in the near future, if ever. And to your point around 200% growth, that's a big number on a big number.
Yeah.
Right? And and we have a finite time in order to do it, right? With the PSD2 deadlines currently at the end of next year. So I think every conversation that we're having with customers is all around, okay, how do we get ready for this? How do we optimize the platform? The good news is that we've got transactions coming through already, right? And have done with many of our customers for a long time. We're seeing the new version 2.0 EMV 3DS transactions are coming through, but to actually get compliant, we don't realistically have a huge amount of time. So I think that focus on the tier one clients that we're working with, and we do have obviously partners for our other clients, and we've done a lot of work with those partners so that if customers want that rich engagement model, they've got absolutely somewhere to turn to globally, so we can do that. So I think that's great from a focus perspective on clients. On the product side, we focused on 3DS, but we've also kind of moved out of our traditional model, which I think is it's a huge deal for us, right? So we've been involved in banks really since we were formed.
Yep.
And we've made a decision and been successful in moving out of that space into the merchant area, which is potentially, it is a entirely new market for us. But we've got a message that really resonates there as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've come to realize through my interaction with this business so far is that here's what we do really well. We score payment transactions for risk of fraud, and based upon that score, are able to initiate some sort of action. Whether that action is to recommend that the issuing bank allow that transaction to go through, whether it's to deny that transaction because it really looks like fraud, or whether it's to challenge the identity of the cardholder. Yeah. And so if you think about that, right, scoring payment transactions for risk of fraud, and then having a rules engine or policy engine that then takes that score and executes a set of actions, that applies to all payments. Yes. And there's all payments are a source of potential fraud. Fraudsters are now going to find the path of least resistance, the ones that have the least fraud controls in place, and they're going to expose it. That's what they do. It's been shown over time. And so, while we've got the number one, we see more 3D secure transactions than anybody on the planet for what we do. There's no reason that we can't expand beyond 3D secure with that core model. And other card not present transactions that are not 3DS, as long as you send the metadata over and we're able to use that metadata to create a fraud score and use our models, which we have this consortium data set and consortium models that we think is best in class, and are told that it's best in class. There's no reason for merchants, we can't help them score all their card not present transactions. And then as you look at other banks, bank transfers are another area, a payment transaction, which looks very much like a credit card transaction and can be scored for risk, and you can challenge the user if necessary. Same model. So when you look at our strategy, it's how do you take that core of what we do and do really well, best in the world at 3D Secure, and just apply it to different protocols. Yeah. That's really the strategy. And there's no magic there. It doesn't feel like we're overreaching. It feels like we're just taking our core and applying it to different protocols as we go. Yeah, exactly. And with our work with EMVCo, we kind of already built the components, the building blocks of this solution. And if you look on the issuer side, I mean, there really shouldn't be an issuer in the world who doesn't have a 3D Secure platform. Right? Haven't found one yet. Yeah. Right? Well, exactly, right? Because you're taking the transaction request, you're taking the fraud liability. You do not want. We had some customers when they were talking about EMV through our processors. So some of the smaller guys, they were saying, "What happens if we just turn it off?" And our message was no, right? Because if you turn it off, you have all the liability and none of the control. So there really shouldn't be an issuer in the world who doesn't have a 3DS platform. I think where we, as an industry, have looked to get greater growth is around the merchant adoption piece. Mm-hmm. And some merchants, they, particularly in Europe, I think they get it, right? And in certain countries, their population is culturally acceptance of a stronger authentication step, should we say. My wife is half Dutch, right? And she as we were
courting. She's very familiar with the payment experience, which at the time was a card into a reader. That then led into the UK adopting those, but really it was a bit clunky. So we wanted to move towards more of a risk-based authentication. But some merchants very, very reluctant to kind of implement 3D Secure. Right?
Yeah.
Now with PSD2, those merchants are saying, well, if we want to play in that, if we want to sell, to your earlier point, into that market, hey, guess what? We're going to need something, right? We're going to need a 3DS server, we're going to need an SDK in order to do that. And I think what we're seeing is that, 3DS on the issuer side pretty much buttoned up. We're starting now to see the mega merchants, which, let's be honest, we don't need every single merchant. It's the volume, right, that's going to transform this industry. As those mega merchants that trade in Europe, they're turning this system on. I'm very confident that they'll then start to see that actually 3DS can support more holistically, right? So in different markets. And then the question is, why wouldn't the remainder turn this on? So if all goes to plan, which is back to the make sure you get ready, then I believe that 3DS is going to become the standard for e-commerce authentication and fraud and risk, to your point.
Yeah, I think it has the chance. And now with the EMV3DS protocol, there's a step forward on this, which allows out-of-band authentication. So there's different methods of authenticating, and I think it's becoming more flexible for merchants. And I agree with you that once merchants start using it, because if they want to sell in Europe, they're going to have to. Yeah. And also Visa and MasterCard have these mandates in place that for a liability shift, to move liability from the merchant for fraud of the transaction to the back-end issuing bank, you have to use 3DS. Yeah. And so I think we will see continued adoption, but I think what we'll see is I think what those merchants will find is that they'll wish they had done it earlier, because there's really not much downside to it, especially if you can start to have more control over, when the challenge occurs, how the challenge occurs, and, maintaining that user experience and making sure that, you don't see much of a degradation there.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. So no downside and a ton of upside, right? With the right solution. And we won't go into the secret sauce today, right? But we do have an offering where we can support merchants to get all of the, none of the downside, but a ton of upside around data and additional insights and full control over that customer experience.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about it, actually.
Oh, yeah, massively.
Yeah, I think the conversations we've had have been, customers are also, our prospects are pretty excited as well.
Yeah. And I guess the question is, for merchants, for issuers across their entire payments ecosystem is, through the work that you've been driving with the team. The question now is if there's an opportunity to drive an incremental uptick in fraud performance, then we want to have that conversation, right? Because we're not just in the 3DS game now, we're in the 3DS merchant game, and we're in the non-3DS CMP fraud and risk space, which is hugely exciting.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's going to be I think we have an opportunity to do a lot of really interesting and meaningful work with our customers over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a fascinating time for both customers and for us. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
I'm looking forward to it.
So priorities, any comments on?
Priorities, yeah. Priorities is for the things we do today, we're going to do them really, really well. Okay. That's priority number one. And that requires a maniacal focus on execution from us inside the division, inside the Arcot tribe. And I think customers will see that we are putting our foot on the gas as it relates to execution, and that what we put out in the market is going to be best in class. So that's point one. Point two is we really want to get the new model in place where we're wrapping resources around our best customers. I think it will result in a ton of value for our customers. And it will just be a better way to operate, and it'll allow us to truly partner with our customers and start driving down, fraud and just creating tremendous amounts of value. And then I would say on the third piece, I would say is, we're going to continue to expand into new markets and apply our model to different use cases. I think that by doing so, it's interesting because when we think about expanding the model, I mentioned different protocols. The model itself uses AI to get smarter. So the models get smarter. The more transactions we put through the models, the smarter the models get, the more valuable then, or more accurate our prediction of fraud is, and the more value customers get. And then we hope that they put more transactions on the system, and then we get smarter and customers get more value and they put more transactions. We keep this cycle going where we expect in the next 2 to 3 years to have the best fraud scoring mechanism in the market.
Yeah.
And that's our goal.
Yeah.
And I think we have a tangible, actionable path to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to those three points, one of the things that Broadcom is very, very good at is investing in R&D. This is an R&D company and making things robust, and we leverage those global relationships, shall we say, with big technology players. Yep. So on point number one, yeah, absolutely. On point number two, around the customer success managers and lavishing the team with resources. So we will have a session with that team. So we'll do a deep dive on that. Yeah, and over the last few months, I think we've seen just how impactful that can be with customer engagement, resolving any issues, but also building that partnership as we look to broader use cases. And on the model, we've got a session with Paul Delaney on the data science team.
That's going to be interesting. So I'm looking forward to this.
We'll do a deep dive.
This will be good
on that as well.
Yeah.
So fantastic.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, great talking to you. Anytime. Hope to come back sometime.
Yeah, you too. And I've done as a final comment. You've been out in the field meeting customers, so I'm sure that we'll continue that across the world.
Absolutely.
We've got some trips planned up. So
those are my favorite meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. We may speak again.
Good.
All right.
All right, great. Thanks, James.
Thank you.